Hey, this week on Fishing Canada, we'll show you some of the basic and finer points on how to use a fly rod. As well, we'll take you to the Ganaraska River in Port Hope, Ontario, and show you some winter fishing for rainbow trout. So don't go away, we'll be right back in 1 minute.
Yes, we're in for some good fishing in Canada.
The best way to learn how to handle a fly rod is to listen to a fly fishing expert. And anyone who's written several books on the subject is the expert we should be listening to. Of course, I'm talking about Alf Walker. On a recent trip, Alf and I went out fly fishing, and he showed me the finer points on how to use the rod and reel. Even though it looks difficult, Alf tells me that with a few lessons from the right person, and I'll stress the right person, you too can master this unique technique in a matter of a few days. Why would you use a fly rod versus a conventional rod?
Well, today is an experiment. You threw the challenge at me that predatory fish would take a fly as well as a lure. We're still even Steven, as a matter of fact. The outfit you're seeing me using here is just a little bit out of the ordinary. This is a racing car to everybody's family saloon that they drive back and forward to work with. This is a line class 10, and quite frankly, if you relate the number to the number of cylinders in a car, you've got some idea of the horsepower here. The average outfit that a man would use would be a number 6, maybe a number 8 for bass, and this is the real heavy animal that you'd use out west for salmon in BC.
Is it a little stiffer rod than you would see on the streams around here?
It's very powerful, and I think the only thing that I can get to relate as far as answering your question is concerned is this rod and line is capable of casting a size of fly which is similar in size to what you'd be using for walleye or bass. So it's a real powerful outfit. It's a weight forward line, and the line is a high density, fast sinking line. Rod 9.5 foot.
Well, I've heard of floating line and then tapered line and sinking line. What's the basic differences?
Well, the shape of the line comes under the designation of double tapered or level or weight forward or shooting head. This is weight forward, and its silhouette is rather like a spear. All the weight of the line is out in the air, and the first third of the line has all the weight. The rod is a lever and a spring, and it's a question of just coordinating everything to move the line back and forward, pushing and pulling the lure that you're casting through the air. It's essential that you can double haul. The double haul that I was telling you about is this left-hand motion that you see, pulling the line back and forward through the air, developing speed, and then a final tug throwing the line out. This is going out 30 yards. It's as far as anybody would normally cast with a spinning outfit. The line is sunk. The fly that we're using at the other end is that deer hair lure with an Uncle Josh leech on it, so it's buoyant and above the weed, and we're stripping it back, trying to manipulate and get some life into the thing, exactly the same as a spin fisherman varies his rate of recovery when he's cranking the line. A take registers exactly the same through a fly rod as a spinning outfit. Just get a solid bang when the fish takes the lure and turns with it.
Would that rod there have as much backbone as one of these for fishing?
This would have much more backbone, and with it being longer, it's much more fun to play a fish on. The longer rod magnifies all the motion, rather like a flipping stick as opposed to your 5-foot bait caster. There's a lot of difference in the action. But as far as this fly outfit is concerned, it's just a question of a rod powerful enough to do the job. But this would pump any size fly through the air effectively. And as I say, it's just this double haul that gets you the distance. And then stripping back the line, the big secret is don't move your feet. And then just don't worry about getting it tangled. Just strip the line back and let it fall into the boat. It's just made to do one job specifically, and that's cast out. The line sinks, drags down the fly with it, and you present it to the fish.
All right.
In still water conditions, get rid of the weed, you have to provide all the action of the fly yourself. In a river, you would cast it out, and then the current swings the fly past where the fish are.
For some of our audience that would be interested in starting fly fishing, what would you suggest to them? Something basic, something they can feel comfortable with?
Probably the most versatile outfit they could get would be a number 7. That's the power again, a rod about 9 feet long, and this rod would do for bass or trout. The choice of line, there's basically floating, sinking, and the ones that half float and half sink. Initially, probably the best buy is the floating line until you get used to the mechanics of casting, and then move on from there. Fly fishing is more catered for than spinning in the respect that the line has specific functional purposes and does them well. They either float on the surface or they sink like a brick, and anywhere in between.
Well, the way you do that just amazes me. How long did it take you to catch on, or does it take a long time to catch on?
With good tuition, you could be fishing in 2 or 3 days, as well as your tutor was. It's just a question of being taught. The big hang-up with this is you try and do what you think you are seeing. And quite frankly, there's a lot of arm waving and a lot of rod motion that actually isn't. Your casting stroke is very short. The rest of the motion is just synchronization and timing and smoothing everything out. But the basic stroke is very short. It's there and there. But that's very jerky. So inside those 2 pulses is this longer, smooth motion, but it's still a crescendo of movement continually. Once you start moving, you just continue to get faster until you drive the line away. That's the same with spinning. If your casting stroke isn't an acceleration, the rod bends and then just gradually decompresses through the stroke, and you don't get the benefit from your rod. And this explains why 2 people casting, one guy is casting further than the other. The whole secret being that one is casting a good, clean acceleration, and the other guy is moving the rod at a constant pace. The rod is a lever and a spring, and if it's used correctly, then you get the maximum from it. But it's the guy who's driving it that matters.
Stay tuned for more Fish in Canada.
You know, about the toughest times for Canadian anglers to endure are those hard, cold days in the dead of winter. Man, they just never seem to go by. Oh sure, there's always ice fishing, and don't get me wrong, that can be a lot of fun as well. We do a lot of it here at Fish in Canada, but there's something about a fish peeling line off in open water that just can't be replaced. But the only way I'm going to experience that kind of excitement in the months of January and February is to don the old snowmobile suit, insulated boots, and a pair of warm gloves and head on down to the nearest river that dumps into the Great Lakes system. And don't expect to get a pier or breakwall all to yourself. The word is out on this type of fishing, and the action can be really hot, with lineups resembling opening day. So don't be discouraged, there's a lot of piers, and believe me, a lot of trout as well. But this type of fishing is definitely not for the fair weather fishermen. Sub-zero temperatures and gusting winds kind of make you feel like last week's leftovers forgotten in the freezer. In fact, this pier is only 3 feet of concrete. The other 10 feet is solid ice. Dressing properly here is even more important than the right tackle. Many an angler's gone home skunked before, but to go home skunked and frostbitten is another story. Don't worry what you look like on the outside, it's what you feel like on the inside that counts here. And above all, those sloping icing banks are every bit as treacherous as they look. I recommend wearing boots with cleats and or spikes. We recently sent our film crew down to the Ganaraska River in Port Hope, Ontario to film some of the fishing. Now let's eavesdrop on them and see what the fishing was like that day in February.
glimpse of a silver there. There he is. Let me know if he's on there. Oh, yeah. Someone want to put a net under that?
I'll take the tail right for us.
Okay, egg shakers come off, floats come on. They're illegal in this station, boy. Bottom of it. No, I'm straight out sort of in front of me. Just head shaking here now. Good runner. Net.
Nice fish.
Hold her in there, Chief. Put her in. Here we go. There it is. You got it. Hold on that, Steve. Like that. Okay, just hold on. Okay. Yeah. There we are.
I hope you enjoyed that segment at Port Hope, Ontario. You know, the action was really hot that day and the fish were coming in every few minutes. This winter steelhead fishing is a real bonus at a time when spring trout and walleye fishing and summer bass and muskie fishing seem to be way off. But there's more to it than just dropping in your line. Even this type of fishing has become very specialized. And here's Fishing Canada Pro Staff member Randy Jennings to show us how it's done.
Now when these fish are coming into this harbor, they're suspended. And what I mean by suspended is they're not right on the bottom of the river. They're up a few feet from the bottom. And what you have to do is you have to get your bait to those fish. First of all, we're using a slip sinker type rig. What this enables you to do is it enables you to get a good cast, get your line down to the bottom, but when the fish actually takes your line out, that slip sinker will not put any extra resistance on them, so you can feel even the most sensitive hits. Going further down the line here, we have a device called a corky. Just nail it down tight to the hook here and push the corky over the eye of the hook. By doing this, you're going to keep it stationary on the hook. When it's stationary on the hook, it's going to effectively float your row bag off the bottom of the river. If it's left to go slack, it won't do as good a job because sometimes it's going to be up your line a few inches and it's just not going to do the same job. Make sure it's over the eye of that hook before you put your row bag on. What we get when we put all this together is we get the weight here on the bottom and the corky floating off the bottom, holding your row bag at the level that the fish are at. This is a very effective way to fish for these fish at this time of year. The fish aren't extremely active, the water's cold, they're very lethargic, their metabolism is very slow. These fish are not screaming in here and hitting baits like they do in the fall. You've got to work your baits slow. This is one of the best rigs for using at this time of year. You won't find a better producer in my opinion. Another effective way to catch these fish at this time of year is with a float rig. Maybe some of you have already seen floats being used before. All it is it's just a little device that keeps your line off the bottom. By keeping your line off the bottom, it's another effective way of presenting your bait to the fish. Okay, when we use these floats, what we do is we fasten them on our line with tubing, which I'm going to show you in a minute. We have our hook below the float with a progression of weights underneath it. The float will stand up straight in the water. It keeps your bait off the bottom. When the float goes down, you merely set the hook and reel the fish in. It's not a very difficult or a very technical type of fishing. There's nothing really hard about it. You use this surgical tubing to fasten your float onto your line. Whatever type of float you're using, I recommend these type of pin floats. But regardless of that, all it does is it just slides over the dowling of your float like that, like so, and it fastens your line to your float. The back of this particular float, as you can see here, has a little eyelid on it, so I just run the line through there, leave it like that, slide it down to my next split shot. Now we're going to work our way down. We have a progression of split shots leading right down to our row bag. As you can see, between the row bag and the last split shot, I've left a couple of feet. The reason for this is it makes your row bag sink a little bit slower, it makes it look a little bit more natural to the fish, and it can help your catch by the end of the day by about 20%. It can increase it by about 20%, I'd say at least anyway. If you have this weight too close to your row bag, say you put your last split shot here, it kills your row bag. It makes your row bag sit there in the middle of the water and all the current. It doesn't make it look right. Even though we're fishing slack water, we're still going to do this. This is something you've always got to remember. Keep that 2 feet, 18 inches to 2 feet between your last split shot and your row bag. You'll catch more fish.
Thanks, Randy. That'll help us a lot next time we go trout fishing. If any of you have a favorite fishing hotspot you'd like to share with us, give us a call or write us a letter, and we'll try and feature it on future Fishing Canada episode. We welcome your input because we want to show you exactly what you want to see. Remember, we're especially interested in hearing from your club or service organization if you're currently sponsoring conservation work. Give us a call, and we'll make sure to feature it on a future Fishing Canada Conservation Corner.